Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today is going to be a continuation from a popular video I did when I kind of first started making these videos titled The Top 5 Things People Most Get Wrong About John Mayer's Gear. Something like that. Link will be right up here for you guys if you want to give that a watch if you haven't already. And today we're just going to do another 5 things that I believe people get quite frequently wrong, do some myth busting, and have some fun with the video today. So sit back, relax, and we're going to get right on into it. Number 1 on today's list involves a green overdrive pedal that Mayer has used for, seems like forever, pretty much. And that is, you probably guessed it, the Ibanez TS10. So number 1 being that John uses a made in Japan TS10, or one that has that JRC 4558 chip inside of it. And we actually don't know that John uses an Ibanez TS10 with that chip, or that his is made in Japan. We have no idea. There are no pictures of the back of his pedal, no reliable sources indicating that that's what he uses. We just don't know, unfortunately. And until maybe Renee or Jeremy or even John or Josh Scott comes out and says, no, he doesn't use one with the chip in it, or he uses one with the chip in it, or his is made in Japan, made in Taiwan, we won't know. So you can't for certainly say, oh, you need the made in Japan one to get John Mayer's tube screamer sound, because we don't know that that is for sure what he uses. And it's also worth noting that in reality, the chip doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter!
It does not matter what chip you get in your TS10. In reality, that chip doesn't really impact the overall sound of the pedal. And there are so many different tolerances in these old pedals that one is probably not going to sound like the other, even if you have 2 made in Japan ones. Maybe I'll get a Taiwan one and actually shoot them out for you guys and show that you can get great sounds with the made in Taiwan TS10 without that chip in it. And it's worth noting, it's actually pretty easy just to take the chip out and put the proper chip in that pedal without paying the exorbitant price for one that's actually made in Japan. And again, we don't know for certain if that's what John has been using or not. So if someone tells you, oh, you gotta have the made in Japan one for the Mayer thing, you don't. And honestly, you don't even need a TS10. You can get great tube screamer sounds with any tube screamer style pedal, and it's not worth stressing out over having the TS10 with the proper chip. Even Josh Scott has been joking a lot, about the Klon and about these chips being very valuable for the pedal. It's not the case. You don't need it. You can get a great tube screamer sound with something like a JHS Bonsai, a Cornerstone Antique, way huge green Rhino. You don't need a TS10 to do the Mayer thing at all. If you want to be very specific and get kind of as close to what he has as possible, then yeah, grab one of these guys, grab a TS10, but reality, you don't need it, and honestly, it does not matter what chip is in a TS10 or really what tube screamer you have. Something that's voiced kind of like a TS10 will do the trick. Number 2 involves a song that we've had out for a while now, but got re-released on Sawbrock, and that involves I Guess I Just Feel Like. Specifically, we're talking about the solo. And a lot of people believe that John used a fuzz pedal or an octave fuzz, either live or in the studio, for I Guess I Just Feel Like. And both of these are not true. We know that John actually posted clips of him demoing and playing around with the solo and doing some runs and practice trials of what he might do.
Man.
You want to punch into that right there?
No.
And he then posted saying, guys want to know what amp I'm playing? And the Dumble was right in view, and then he pans the camera down, and it's a vintage Vibro Champ, absolutely dimed.
Curious as to what amp I played yesterday on the solo I posted? It's that one.
And between that and the vintage Casino he was playing, probably the tone knob fairly down, he got that wicked sound for I Guess I Just Feel Like. Obviously, we don't exactly know if there was anything else in the chain, but my instinct, and I'm willing to bet, it was literally just that Casino plugged straight into that Vibro Champ, dimed. There you go. That's your sound. Live, however, for I Guess I Just Feel Like is a bit of a different story. We do have that Epiphone Casino making a debut live with John for the 2019 World Tour. But it got phased out and he stuck with using a Silver Sky for the rest of the tour. There were no fuzz fuzz pedals or octave fuzz pedals on his pedal board, so he wasn't relying on those to get his lead sound. He was relying on a combination of different pedals depending on the leg of the tour to get his lead tone. So I guess I just feel like does not use a fuzz pedal, and it does not use an octave fuzz either. It's overdrive with, you know, the Silver Sky and his main rig live, and Vintage Casino into a Fender Fibro Champ, absolutely dimed in the studio on the record. All right, number 3, and that is that John uses Milkman amplifiers. Before I get into this one, nothing against Milkman amplifiers. They are phenomenal, and if you're looking for a great amp that will do the mayor thing and more, Milkman amps are a great brand to look into. They're phenomenal. I've played a few and blown away by all of them. They're fantastic and definitely a step up from a Fender in my opinion. But the belief that John uses Milkman amps isn't entirely correct, and I guess it depends on your level of interpretation on how correct this is, and I'm going to explain this to you. So most people, when they say that John uses Milkman amps, are referring to the fact that in 2015 he posted a selfie with an 85 watt pedal steel amp, saying this is one of the best amps he's played in a long time. And that is major kudos to Milkman. If John's given that big of a compliment, you know they're phenomenal amps. Now the thing that kind of irks me about when people say, oh yeah, John uses Milkman amps, is that I guarantee you that majority of people are basing it off of that Instagram photo. Now the reason why I'm saying is that everyone pretty much bases that belief with that selfie is because John has used a Milkman amp live twice, and they're both relatively unknown circumstances. One was in 2015 with Phil Lesh, and that was actually the show that debuted one of the original prototypes of the Super Eagle, and majority of people are not even aware that this show happened or was a thing. And then also in 2016, he briefly used it with Dead & Company for I think one show, maybe 2 tops. And most people, again, don't really realize that. Other than that, some Instagram lives, John was using the Milkman amp in his home, but in reality, 2 shows live, does that really translate to John using a Milkman amp? If you ask someone, what amp does he use? 2 shows doesn't really translate, at least in my opinion, to him really using it. But they're great amplifiers, absolutely brilliant, and if you try one out, you're going to get some amazing tones out of it, but don't buy it because you think John Mayer uses it, because that honestly, in my opinion, is not really true. You're not buying Milkman because John uses it. You're buying a 2-Rock, or you're buying a vintage Fender or something like that, or a J-Mod because John uses it, not a Milkman because John uses it. If any of that makes sense. Let me try and explain and put it this way to you guys. If someone were to ask me what kind of guitar John Mayer uses, I wouldn't say he uses an Epiphone Casino, even though he used it a few times for one song. I wouldn't say he uses a Gibson Les Paul Jr. or a Gibson Les Paul. I just wouldn't. Just because he's used it a handful of times, in my opinion at least, I wouldn't tell someone that that's what he uses. Same thing with the Milkman amp. I wouldn't say John uses Milkman amps when he's used them twice live, let's be honest. Number 4 on our list today is one that honestly makes me laugh a bit when I hear it, and it's something I hear quite a lot actually, and pretty much it's when someone says, John Mayer's tone is nothing special. At the end of the day, it's a clean Fender and like a TS9. And that's not entirely true, at least in terms of live performances. We're only going to be talking strictly live here. So I'm going to play you guys first a promotional video John did for the 2019 World Tour playing Slow Dancing. This is through, I believe, a Fender Deluxe Reverb, and here's what it sounds like. Next, I'm going to play for you that infamous clip of John demoing one of his prototypes of the 2-Rock John Mayer Signature playing Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. Now, even though the 2019 World Tour promo one was professionally recorded and done, the Two Rock one from way back when, shot with just a crappy like cell phone camera, it looks like, blows the tone out of that one, at least in my opinion, out of the water. You can't really compare the two. And when you bring John's whole live rig into the equation, yeah, at its root, at its base, it's a Fender style sound. But you can't really compare the live sound that he would get out of a Two Rock or like a Dumble compared to the live sound that he would get out of a Fender. You just can't compare them, even in those two videos. That's evidence enough. There is more to his tone than that. So for when people say, oh, his tone's nothing special because it's just a clean Fender, it's not entirely true in my opinion. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more dynamics to his tone with these amplifiers. Why do you think they're so famous? I'm going to quote John here when he talked about the Two Rock amps and how he compared them to a Fender and a Dumble. The Two Rock has the directness of the Dumble, but the color of a Fender. You could buy a Dumble and a twin reverb and play them at the same time, but the Two Rock does that better. So again, his bass tone, yes, it's Fender inspired. It has kind of some of the color of a Fender, but live at least, there's so much more. Now I know what you might be thinking. Oh, well, John actually used a deluxe reverb in the studio when he recorded Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. And yeah, that's true, but we're talking live. And I do personally believe, at least to say and kind of almost dumb down his tone to the level of just being a Fender and like a TS9 is really naive thinking, and that John's tone has so many more parts going on, so many key aspects of his tone that make it what it is. You can't just bring it down to that level and say it's nothing special, at least in my opinion. Lastly on our list, number 5, is that John Mayer's Two Rock Signatures got upgraded to the Two Rock Crystal specifications. And I'm going to quote Chad Mangrum, who worked at Two Rock back during this era and now actually owns sine wave amplifiers. So go check him out and check out sine wave amplifiers. And I'm going to just directly quote what he said on this topic. Did Mayer get his amps modded to crystals? No. The signatures he owns and play have never been modded. However, he did ask for a second rig built a while back. These were somewhat of a test bed for the new layout and part use that became the Crystal. John got the amps and they fell right in line with what he wanted. Now the amps that they're talking about, the second rig that kind of became the platform for what they based for the Crystal, those are those white pen JM SIGs that you saw around the 2013-2014 era with Born and Raised in Paradise Valley. I talk about those a bit more in my history of John Mayer's amplifier video. I'll put a card also up here talking about that one if you guys want to go see that too. But when designing the Crystal, they used that time when they were building him those white pen signature amps kind of as a test bed and to get re-familiar with the circuit and then work on updating it when it came for the Crystal. So John's Two Rock Signatures never became Two Rock Crystals, that we know for sure. So there you guys have it. That's another 5 things I believe people most frequently get wrong about John Mayer's gear and tone. If you guys like the video, please hit thumbs up, please subscribe, ring that bell button. Right now I'm in the process of just making weekly videos on a Friday, so stay tuned next week for the next video. And until then, as always, thanks for watching.